The sky over France, April 8, 1943. At 27,000 feet, German ace Oberleutnant Ralph Hermeken smirked beneath his oxygen mask. Through the canopy of his Focke-Wulf 190, he watched clumsy shapes struggling to climb, American P-47 Thunderbolts on their combat debut. "The enemy has sent us flying milk bottles," he radioed his wingman, laughing. Below, 16 Thunderbolts of the 4th Fighter Group labored upward. Their Pratt & Whitney R2800 engines strained against 7-ton weights. To German pilots used to sleek Spitfires, these barrel-shaped fighters with tiny wings and huge propellers seemed ridiculous. But what Hermeken didn't know was that he was witnessing the arrival of the weapon that would systematically dismantle the Luftwaffe. Within 18 months, these flying milk bottles would become instruments of terror. Their .850 caliber Browning machine guns, firing 6,000 rounds per minute, could tear a Messerschmitt in half in under 2 seconds. The transformation began that morning when Major Donald Riley spotted the Germans diving. A veteran of the Eagle Squadron, Riley knew his pilots must unlearn everything they knew about air combat. The P-47 represented a radical design departure. While Germany built lightweight, agile interceptors, Republic Aviation created a high-altitude juggernaut that used mass, power, and overwhelming firepower to redefine aerial warfare. Among the 56 American pilots that day were future aces. But on April 8, 1943, they were novices facing the world's most experienced fighter force. This is the story of how industrial logic defeated tactical brilliance, and how German laughter turned to terror when they discovered what synchronized 50 caliber bullets could do at 400 yards. The Thunderbolt emerged from the panic of June 1940. With German fighters sweeping across France, Republic's chief designer Alexander Kartveli was tasked with creating a high-altitude interceptor to match the Luftwaffe's best. What he designed instead was a monster. "It will be a dinosaur," Kartveli told his team, "but a dinosaur with good proportions." The XP-47B prototype that flew on May 6, 1941, shocked observers. At 900 pounds empty, it weighed 65% more than its predecessor. Its massive turbo supercharger and complex ductwork gave it a pregnant appearance. Test pilots wondered, could this thing actually fly? Not only did it fly, it dominated at altitude. The 18-cylinder double Wasp engine maintained full power at 27,000 feet, where German fighters gasped for air. The turbo supercharger delivered sea-level performance in the stratosphere. Major Hubert "Hub" Zemke of the 56th Fighter Group initially despised the aircraft. His unit lost 18 pilots and 41 aircraft in training accidents between September 1942 and January 1943. The P-47 killed more Americans in training than Germans in early combat. It bounced on landing, torque rolled on takeoff, and dove so enthusiastically, pilots discovered compressibility, controls freezing as shock waves formed on wings. But those who mastered it found something extraordinary. Lieutenant Robert Johnson, who would become a top American ace, described his first flight. "It was like strapping yourself to a locomotive. You didn't fly it, you aimed it." Early combat confirmed German prejudices. Thunderbolts couldn't turn with Focke-Wulf 190s, couldn't climb with Messerschmitt 109s. Luftwaffe pilots attacked from below where the heavy Americans struggled, forcing turning fights where agility mattered more than firepower. After his first encounter, Commodore Joseph Priller of JG-26 reported, "The new American fighter is meat for the slaughter. It flies like a truck, turns like a freight train, climbs like a pregnant cow." Statistics supported German confidence. In their first month, American groups lost 14 Thunderbolts for only 3 confirmed kills. RAF pilots suggested Americans reconsider their mount, joking the best evasive maneuver in a P-47 was to unstrap and run around the roomy cockpit. But German intelligence missed something crucial. Shot-down Thunderbolts absorbed incredible punishment. One returned from a May 4th mission with 21 cannon holes and over 100 machine gun strikes. damage that would have disintegrated a Messerschmitt or Spitfire. The massive radial engine, lacking vulnerable coolant systems, shrugged off hits that would stop liquid-cooled fighters. More significantly, when P-47s hit their targets, results were catastrophic. Their weapons created a convergence zone of destruction German pilots had never experienced. Unlike cannon-armed fighters with limited ammunition, the Thunderbolt could sustain fire for over 30 seconds, an eternity in air combat. The event that began changing German perceptions occurred on June 26, 1943, over Lazo, France. Lieutenant Robert S. Johnson's formation of 48 P-47s was returning from escort when 16 Focke-Wulf 190s from JG-26 bounced them. The Germans executed a perfect attack from the sun. Johnson's Thunderbolt took catastrophic damage in the first seconds. 4 20mm cannon shells exploded across his aircraft. The canopy shattered, hydraulic fluid sprayed the cockpit, the engine cowling tore away, and fire erupted behind the instrument panel. Wounded by shrapnel, Johnson tried to bail out but discovered the canopy was jammed. A 20mm shell had welded it shut. He was trapped in a dying aircraft at 27,000 feet. What happened next defied all assumptions about combat damage tolerance. Despite no forward visibility, a shaking engine and intermittent controls, Johnson leveled the aircraft and pointed it toward England. The P-47 continued flying with damage that would have reduced any other fighter to falling debris. Then it got worse. A lone Focke-Wulf 190 discovered the crippled Thunderbolt limping toward the channel at under 170 mph. The German pilot positioned behind Johnson and opened fire with his 20mm cannon and machine guns. Johnson, unable to evade, huddled behind his armor plate. The Thunderbolt absorbed the entire cannon ammunition load. The German repositioned and fired again with machine guns. Cannon ammunition exhausted, he pulled alongside, staring in disbelief at the flying wreck. Johnson saw his face, young, blonde, expression shifting from confidence to confusion to fear. The German repositioned and emptied his remaining machine gun ammunition into the Thunderbolt. Still, it flew. He pulled alongside again, shook his head in amazement, gave an informal salute, and peeled away, presumably out of ammunition. Johnson's P-47 landed at Manston with its engine failing on the runway. The crew chief stopped counting bullet holes after 200. One cannon shell had exploded inches from Johnson's head. Another detonated against the armor behind his seat. The engine took direct hits. Control cables were partially severed. 3 of 4 main fuselage longerons were shot through. Yet the aircraft brought him home. The survival sent shockwaves through both air forces. American engineers realized they'd underestimated their creation. German intelligence initially refused to believe it. No aircraft could absorb that much punishment. But multiple pilot testimonies confirmed the impossible. The Thunderbolt had taken everything the Luftwaffe's best fighter could deliver and survived. By July 1943, American pilots learned to exploit the P-47's true strengths. Lieutenant Colonel Hubert Zemke discovered the secret through brutal trial and error. Don't turn with them. Don't climb with them at low altitude. Use your weight. Use your power. Use your guns. The Thunderbolt's massive weight became a weapon. In a dive, nothing could catch it. From 30,000 feet, a P-47 could reach 550 mph faster than any German fighter in a vertical dive. This speed converted to altitude in zoom climbs that left pursuers behind. Captain Walter Beckham developed what became known as the boom and zoom tactic. Pilots called it the Thunderbolt turkey shoot. Instead of dogfighting, P-47 formations climbed to 30,000 feet, higher than Germans could effectively operate. When Luftwaffe fighters appeared below, Thunderbolts rolled inverted and dove, reaching speeds that made deflection shooting impossible. At the dive bottom, American guns spoke. German survivors described facing a wall of lead. Aircraft caught in this convergence pattern didn't just fall, they disintegrated. The true revelation of American firepower came during the August 17, 1943, double raid on Schweinfurt and Regensburg, the deepest penetration into Germany attempted to date. This mission demonstrated both the P-47's range limitations and terrifying effectiveness when employed properly. Major David Schilling, leading the 62nd Fighter Squadron, encountered Messerschmitt 110 destroyers, positioning to attack B-17s. The twin-engine German fighters were heavily armed but less maneuverable, the Luftwaffe's specialized bomber killers. Schilling's flight of 4 Thunderbolts rolled into their attack dive from 28,000 feet. Unteroffizier Heinrich Roth, a gunner in 1 Me-110, later recounted, "The American fighters came down like hammers from heaven. I opened fire at 300 meters. Good hits. I saw them strike the fighter's wing. The P-47 didn't even wobble. Then he fired. The aircraft ahead of us simply came apart. Not shot down, destroyed. Wings separated from fuselage, tail severed, crew compartment shredded into metal confetti. In 2 seconds, a 110 became nothing." 8 Messerschmitt 110s were destroyed in less than a minute. German pilots had never experienced such concentrated firepower. Each P-47 carried 425 rounds per gun, 3,400 rounds total, weighing nearly 900 pounds. At convergence distance, typically 300 yards, all 8 guns intersected in a zone roughly 6 feet in diameter. Anything in that zone faced 100 projectiles per second, each traveling 2,900 feet per second. The ammunition itself revealed American industrial might. While German fighters struggled with limited cannon ammunition, 120, 200 rounds for a 20mm weapon, American pilots could sustain fire for over half a minute. The standard combat load mixed armor-piercing incendiary, tracer, and ball ammunition designed to both destroy and ignite. Lieutenant Colonel Francis Gabby Gabreski, who would become the top American ace in Europe, described the effect. "When you hit them with all 8, they don't just go down, they explode. I saw a 109 literally cut in half. The pilot never knew what hit him." By September 1943, the Luftwaffe discovered another horrifying reality. P-47 performance improved dramatically with altitude, while German fighters suffered. The turbo-supercharged double Wasp maintained rated power up to 30,000 feet. German fighters relying on mechanical superchargers saw performance degrade significantly above 25,000 feet. Oberleutnant Hans Philipp, one of Germany's most successful aces with 205 victories, encountered this reality fatally on October 8, 1943. Leading JG-1 against B-17s at 28,000 feet over Bremen, Philipp found his Focke-Wulf 190 sluggish in thin air. The BMW 801 engine, powerful at medium altitudes, gasped for oxygen nearly 6 miles above Earth. When P-47s of the 56th Fighter Group dove from 32,000 feet, the German fighters were sitting ducks. Robert Johnson, now an experienced combat pilot, spotted Philipp's distinctive Focke-Wulf with elaborate nose art. Johnson's combat report was clinical. "Opened fire at 300 yards, 30-degree deflection. Observed strikes along entire fuselage. Enemy aircraft exploded. No parachute observed." Philipp's death sent shockwaves through the Luftwaffe. If one of their best, a veteran of over 500 combat missions on both fronts, couldn't survive against Thunderbolts, what chance did average pilots have? The German High Command ordered an immediate investigation. The November 1943 report to Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring was sobering. The Thunderbolt service ceiling exceeded 42,000 feet, higher than any German fighter could reach. Its dive speed approached the sound barrier. Its armor included steel plate behind the pilot, bulletproof glass windscreen, and deflection plates around the engine. Most disturbingly, its rugged construction allowed it to absorb damage that would destroy 3 conventional fighters and still return home. In January 1944, a new variant began arriving in England that completed the transformation from laughingstock to nightmare. The P-47D-22 featured a Hamilton standard propeller with paddle blades 11 feet in diameter. The climb rate improvement was dramatic, where earlier Thunderbolts managed 2,200 feet per minute at sea level. Paddle blade variants achieved 3,000 feet per minute, matching or exceeding German fighters at most altitudes. The massive propeller also improved acceleration, allowing P-47s to build energy faster in combat. Hauptmann Heinz Knoke of JG-11, a veteran with over 200 combat missions, encountered the new variants in February 1944 near Hanover. He wrote in his combat diary, "The fat American fighters have learned to climb. We bounced a formation expecting our usual advantage. They turned into us and climbed with us. When we tried to disengage, they followed to 30,000 feet. Schmitt was caught and blown apart. Nothing left but smoke and fragments. These are not the same machines we laughed at last year." The paddle blade propeller changed the Thunderbolt's sound. The distinctive thundering roar, created by blades reaching supersonic speeds, could be heard for miles. German ground troops reported identifying approaching P-47s by sound alone. A deep, threatening rumble, meaning death from above. They began calling it Jabos, fighter bombers. But by March 1944, it was Donnerkeil, thunderclap. With external fuel tanks, P-47s could escort bombers deep into Germany. The standard configuration carried two 108-gallon wing tanks or a 75-gallon belly tank, extending range to over 1,000 miles. With paddle blade propellers providing improved performance even when loaded, Thunderbolts could fight immediately after dropping tanks. The Luftwaffe's response was to concentrate on bombers, hoping to inflict enough losses to stop the American daylight campaign. But this required flying through the P-47 escort screen, an increasingly suicidal proposition. German pilots developed grudging respect, bordering on fear. Major Günther Rahl, one of Germany's top aces with 275 victories, survived a March 8, 1944 encounter with P-47s that left him badly wounded. He recalled, "We saw them above us, fell silhouettes against the sun. Someone laughed. 'Here come the flying pigs.' Nobody was laughing 80 seconds later. They came down like an avalanche. The first pass destroyed 3 of our fighters, just gone, transformed into burning debris. Their guns poured solid streams of fire. Getting caught in that stream meant instant death." Escort missions revealed another P-47 advantage: endurance. While German fighters operated at maximum power settings, consuming fuel rapidly, the big American radials cruised efficiently at high altitude. Thunderbolts could remain with bombers for hours, rotating top cover while maintaining enough fuel for combat and return. As more P-51 Mustangs arrived for long-range escort in spring 1944, P-47 units increasingly focused on ground attack, a role that would make them the most feared aircraft in the German arsenal. The transition began in April 1944, as Allies prepared for the invasion of France. The Thunderbolt's machine guns proved equally effective against ground targets. Standard armor-piercing incendiary ammunition penetrated most German vehicle top armor, while sheer volume destroyed soft targets in seconds. A 2-second burst put 160 half-inch projectiles into a truck-sized area. But bombs and rockets transformed the P-47 into a true multi-role monster. The D-25 variant carried 2 1,000-pound bombs under wings and an 800-pounder under the fuselage, equal to early war medium bombers. Later variants added zero-length rocket stubs for 10 5-inch high-velocity aircraft rockets, HVAR, each equivalent to a 105mm artillery shell. Oberst Hans von Luck, commanding the 125th Panzer Grenadier Regiment during Normandy, experienced P-47 attacks firsthand. They came in so low, you could see the pilots' faces. The sound was terrifying, engines roaring, rockets screaming, then the hammer of those heavy machine guns. A column of our trucks simply ceased to exist. 40 vehicles transformed into burning wreckage in one pass. The psychological effect was devastating. They called them jabos, but these were something beyond, flying artillery with sniper accuracy. On June 6, 1944, the Luftwaffe discovered how completely the balance had shifted. Over 500 P-47s provided air cover for the invasion, creating an impenetrable umbrella over the beaches. German fighters attempting to reach landing zones were massacred. Oberleutnant Wolfgang Fischer of JG-2, one of only 3 German pilots to reach the beaches that day, reported, "The sky belonged to the Americans. Thunderbolts were stacked from sea level to 30,000 feet. We tried to break through at dawn. 12 fighters from our group. I was the only one to return. The P-47s were waiting at every altitude. You couldn't climb over them, couldn't dive under them. Their guns turned fighters into aluminum rain." In weeks following D-Day, P-47 systematically destroyed German daylight movement. June 1944 statistics were staggering: 651 locomotives, 3,847 trucks, 512 tanks and armored vehicles, 4,553 horse-drawn vehicles destroyed. The Wehrmacht was forced to move only at night, severely hampering response to Allied advances. Germans tried everything: reinforced vehicle armor, more anti-aircraft guns, new camouflage. Nothing worked. The P-47's combination of speed, armor, and firepower made them nearly unstoppable. Even feared 88mm flak guns struggled to track fast-moving fighters at low altitude. While devastating Europe, the P-47 proved its worth in the Pacific. The 348th Fighter Group, operating from New Guinea, discovered the Thunderbolt's qualities perfectly suited the vast distances and harsh conditions. Colonel Neil Kirby, commanding the 348th, developed specific Pacific tactics. On October 11, 1943, he led 4 P-47s against 40 Japanese aircraft over WWII, shooting down 6 himself, earning the Medal of Honor. The Japanese, accustomed to nimble but fragile American fighters, were unprepared for the P-47's combination of firepower and durability. Japanese ace Saburo Sakai, who encountered P-47s over New Guinea, wrote, "We called them monsters. Our 20mm cannon, which could destroy a Zero with few hits, seemed to have no effect. I put dozens of rounds into one Thunderbolt and watched it fly away. Their return fire was terrifying, streams of heavy bullets that tore aircraft apart." The P-47N, developed specifically for the Pacific, featured increased fuel capacity with wing tanks holding 95 gallons each, extending range to 2,150 miles. This variant would escort B-29s to Japan, proving the short-legged fighter of 1943 had evolved into a true long-range weapon. Perhaps the ultimate vindication came in encounters with German jet fighters. The Messerschmitt Me-262, with its 540 mph top speed, should have been untouchable by propeller-driven fighters. But Thunderbolt pilots discovered they could catch jets during takeoff and landing, and in high-speed dives from altitude. On November 27, 1944, Lieutenant Colonel John C. Meyer of the 352nd Fighter Group became one of the first pilots to shoot down an Me-262 with a P-47. Diving from 28,000 feet, Meyer's Thunderbolt reached nearly 500 mph, fast enough to catch the jet in level flight. The jet pilot, confident in his speed advantage, never saw the diving P-47 until Meyer's guns opened at 400 yards. Meyer's combat report noted, "The enemy aircraft disintegrated under fire. Large pieces, including both engines, separated from the fuselage. The pilot did not escape." By early 1945, specialized P-47M variants were deployed specifically to counter German jets and V-1 flying bombs. With a water methanol injection boosting power to 2,800 horsepower and refined aerodynamics, these ultimate Thunderbolts could reach 470 mph in level flight at 30,000 feet, fast enough to intercept jets under certain conditions. Major George Bostwick, commanding the 63rd Fighter Squadron equipped with P-47Ms, shot down 2 Me-262s in March 1945. His tactical report emphasized firepower over speed. The jets are faster, but they can't turn and they can't take punishment. One good burst from our battery, and they come apart like paper. They have to slow down to attack bombers. That's when we get them. The ultimate demonstration of American industrial might came during Operation Bodenplatte, the Luftwaffe's desperate January 1st, 1945 attempt to destroy Allied air power. Nearly 900 German fighters, including their best remaining pilots, launched surprise attacks on Allied airfields across Belgium and the Netherlands. At Ash Airfield, home to the 366th Fighter Group's P-47s, the attack initially succeeded. German fighters destroyed several Thunderbolts on the ground. A captured German pilot brought to the command post pointed at burning aircraft and taunted, "What do you think of that?" Major John C. Meyer's response became legendary. "By tomorrow, we'll have 40 new ones. How long will it take you to replace your pilots?" The German's smirk disappeared. Within 48 hours, factory-fresh P-47D-40s filled the flight line, flown from depots in England. The Luftwaffe lost 271 aircraft and 213 pilots in Bodenplatte, including many irreplaceable instructors and squadron leaders. These losses they could never replace. The Americans lost 134 aircraft total across all attacked airfields, all replaced within a week. The numbers told the story of inevitable defeat. Republic Aviation produced 15,183 P-47s during the war, more than any other American fighter. At peak production, the Farmingdale factory completed one Thunderbolt every hour around the clock. The Evansville plant, built from empty farmland in 1942, produced 500 aircraft monthly by 1944. Each P-47D required 65,000 individual parts, 8 miles of electrical wiring, 2,000 pounds of aluminum, and 300 pounds of rubber. The engine alone contained 2,400 components machined to thousandth of an inch tolerances. Yet American workers, many women who had never seen an aircraft before Pearl Harbor, assembled these complex machines with precision exceeding peacetime standards. Ammunition production was equally staggering. Each P-47 sortie required 3,400 rounds of .50 caliber ammunition. With hundreds of Thunderbolts flying daily missions, consumption exceeded 10 million rounds monthly by mid-1944. The Lake City arsenal produced 90 million rounds monthly. Each cartridge was manufactured to 10,000th of an inch tolerances, ensuring reliable feeding through synchronized gun mechanisms. Fuel consumption was enormous. Each Thunderbolt burned 100 gallons hourly in normal flight, up to 300 with water injection engaged. The 9th Air Force consumed over 25 million gallons of aviation fuel monthly by late 1944, all shipped across the Atlantic in tankers themselves, products of American mass production. Even more impressive than aircraft production was pilot training. By 1944, the United States graduated 30,000 pilots annually from advanced training, more than Germany trained in the entire war. Each P-47 pilot received minimum 400 flight hours before combat, including 100 in advanced fighters. German pilots, by contrast, entered combat with less than 100 total hours by war's end. The quality showed in combat. American pilots arrived in Europe, trained in formation flying, instrument navigation, gunnery, and tactics. They had practiced against captured German aircraft, understanding enemy capabilities and limitations. They knew their aircraft systems intricately, having studied technical manuals German pilots never received. Lieutenant Eugene Roberts, arriving in England September 1944, exemplified the training advantage. I had 420 hours in my logbook, including 75 in the P-47. I'd fired at towed targets, practiced deflection shooting, studied gun camera film from actual combat. My first mission, I knew exactly what to do. The German pilot I faced couldn't have had half my experience. It wasn't even a fair fight. In March 1945, Oberstleutnant Josef Priller, the same pilot who had mocked P-47s as pregnant cows 2 years earlier, was interviewed by German propaganda officials seeking to boost morale. His statement, deemed too demoralizing for publication, revealed the complete transformation in German attitudes. The Thunderbolt is the best fighter bomber ever built. Its firepower is unprecedented. Weapons that never jam, never overheat, never run out of ammunition in normal combat. It carries bombs like a medium bomber, fires rockets like artillery, and fights like a fighter when needed. But beyond the machine is what it represents. Unlimited American production. They lose 10, they build 20. We lose 1, it's gone forever. Their pilots arrive better trained than our instructors. They have fuel for training, ammunition for practice, spare parts for everything. We have nothing but courage. And courage without resources is just delayed defeat. We laughed at them in 1943. We're not laughing now. When you hear those guns, you know death has come calling. The sound haunts us. Mechanical, precise, unstoppable. Like everything American, it's about overwhelming material superiority. They didn't beat us through better tactics or braver pilots. They buried us under an avalanche of steel and lead. By April 1945, the Luftwaffe existed largely on paper. Fuel shortages grounded most aircraft. Experienced pilots were dead or captured. Airfields were cratered ruins. But even with aircraft and fuel, German pilots faced an impossible equation. Attacking meant facing P-47 formations that owned every altitude from ground level to 40,000 feet. Feldwebel Klaus Breichhofer, trained in 1945, flew exactly one combat mission before the war ended. His encounter with P-47s over Leipzig lasted 12 seconds. I saw them diving from above, 4 Thunderbolts in perfect formation. I tried to turn, but they were too fast. The leader fired from 500 meters. My aircraft shook like hit by sledgehammers. The engine exploded, the wings separated. I barely escaped. In the parachute, I watched them destroy my entire staffel, 6 fighters gone in under a minute. The sky rained burning aluminum and bodies. The psychological impact was complete. German pilots developed what medical officers called jabo fever, physical stress symptoms appearing when Thunderbolts were reported. Veterans who had faced Spitfires and Hurricanes without fear became physically ill before missions against P-47s. The distinctive thunder of approaching Thunderbolts caused panic among ground troops who knew survival meant finding cover immediately. Final P-47 operations statistics defied comprehension. In Europe, 3,752 German aircraft destroyed in aerial combat, 3,315 on the ground. 86,000 railway cars, 9,000 locomotives, 6,000 armored vehicles, 88,000 trucks, 60,000 horse-drawn vehicles destroyed. In the Pacific, 697 Japanese aircraft destroyed, 150 on the ground, 1,500 vehicles, 160 locomotives, countless barges, ships, and installations. The 9th Air Force alone, primarily equipped with P-47s, flew 213,878 combat sorties, dropped 120,000 tons of bombs, fired 135 million rounds of ammunition, and launched 60,000 rockets. Thunderbolt units achieved a 4.64.1 kill ratio while maintaining the lowest loss rate of any Allied fighter bomber. Behind these numbers lay the human cost. The Luftwaffe lost approximately 28,000 pilots killed combating Western Allied forces, many to concentrated .50 caliber fire. Each loss represented years of training Germany could never replace. By war's end, the average German fighter pilot had less than 30 combat hours. The average P-47 pilot had over 200. At the Luftwaffe Interrogation Center at Oberursel, captured Allied pilots were debriefed by German intelligence. Records captured in 1945 revealed German assessments of Allied aircraft. The P-47 file, updated continuously throughout the war, showed complete reversal of opinion. April 1943. Large, unmaneuverable fighter, inferior to German types in all performance parameters except dive speed, weaponry insufficient against cannon-armed fighters. Assessment: minimal threat. December 1943. Exceptional high-altitude performance, extreme structural strength, firepower increasingly problematic, pilots showing improved tactics. Assessment: significant threat above 25,000 feet. June 1944. Dominant fighter bomber, superior to all German types above 20,000 feet. Firepower, devastating against all target types. Structural strength makes shoot-down extremely difficult. Assessment: critical threat at all altitudes. March 1945. Best fighter bomber of the war. Combination of firepower, durability, and performance unmatched. Pilot quality exceptional. Assessment: unsurvivable in direct engagement. In 1986, at a German-American fighter pilots reunion in Phoenix, former adversaries met in peace. General Adolf Galland, former head of the Luftwaffe fighter arm, was asked about the P-47. His response, recorded on video, captured the complete transformation. "We made a terrible mistake in 1943. We saw this big, heavy fighter and laughed. The Americans don't understand air combat, we said. They built a bomber and called it a fighter. We were the ones who didn't understand. The Americans didn't try to build a European fighter. They built an American one, designed around production, firepower, and survivability. They understood that in a war of attrition, the plane that could take punishment and deliver devastating firepower would win. They were right. The first time I flew a captured P-47 after the war, I understood everything. The power was incredible. It climbed like it was falling upward. The cockpit was comfortable, visibility excellent, controls precise. It was a pilot's aircraft wrapped in armor. But what really impressed me was realizing America built over 15,000 of these complex machines while fighting a two-ocean war. Each required an engine more complex than anything Germany produced, yet they built them faster than we could build simple fighters. That's when I knew we never had a chance. Those guns, we called them Roosevelt's piano because of the sound they made. Once you heard that sound, you never forgot it. Many of my friends heard it for the last time. The P-47 didn't just defeat the Luftwaffe, it destroyed it. The P-47's design represented American industrial philosophy perfectly. Brute force engineering, backed by unlimited resources. Every component was overbuilt, overpowered, and over-engineered. Wing spars could support 40,000 pounds, 3 times the aircraft's loaded weight. The engine mount could withstand 12 G forces. Control cables were doubled throughout with automatic backup systems. The ammunition feed system alone was an engineering marvel. 8 separate ammunition boxes, each holding 425 rounds, fed through electric boost motors to prevent jamming during high G maneuvers. Guns were electrically heated to prevent freezing at altitude. Each gun had its own charging mechanism and could be individually synchronized. Convergence was adjustable from 150 to 400 yards, allowing pilots to optimize for preferred engagement range. Even after the war, some German veterans maintained the P-47 won through quantity, not quality, that German fighters were technically superior, but overwhelmed by numbers. Combat records tell a different story. In engagements where numbers were equal, P-47s consistently prevailed. The heavy machine gun armament, dismissed as inferior to cannon, proved more effective in actual combat. Analysis of gun camera footage revealed why. Cannon shells, while individually more destructive, required precise aim and had limited ammunition, typically 120-200 rounds total. The P-47's weapons created a probability cloud of bullets that guaranteed hits even with imperfect aim. At typical engagement ranges, a 2-second burst put at least 20 rounds into a fighter-sized target, enough to ensure destruction. The ammunition itself was superior. American .50 caliber armor-piercing incendiary rounds used delayed action fuses, ensuring penetration before detonation. The incendiary compound burned at 3,000 WWII, hot enough to ignite aluminum structure. German 20mm shells, while heavier, often exploded on surface contact, causing spectacular but sometimes superficial damage. The P-47 Thunderbolt remains the heaviest single-engine piston fighter ever mass-produced. Its empty weight of 10,000 pounds exceeded the gross weight of some twin-engine fighters. Its engine produced more power than entire bomber formations from the previous war. Its weapons delivered more firepower than an infantry squad, built by the thousands, flown by kids barely out of high school, maintained under combat conditions by mechanics who learned their trade in weeks. The transformation of German opinion from mockery to terror took less than 2 years. In that time, the flying milk bottle became the most feared aircraft in Luftwaffe experience. Veterans who had faced Spitfires, Hurricanes, and Soviet Yaks without flinching spoke of P-47s in hushed tones decades after the war. At the United States Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio, a restored P-47D sits among legendary fighters. Its placard lists specifications and battle honors, but the real story is told by a small display case containing spent .50 caliber shells and gun camera film showing a Focke-Wulf 190 disintegrating under fire. Below the display is a quote from an unnamed German pilot taken from a 1945 interrogation report. "We laughed when we first saw them. Fat, ugly American fighters that couldn't turn, couldn't climb, couldn't fight. We stopped laughing when we realized they didn't need to turn or climb. They just pointed those guns at you and you ceased to exist." The laughter died with our comrades. The P-47 Thunderbolt entered combat as an object of derision and ended the war as an instrument of annihilation. In between, 8 synchronized Browning machine guns rewrote the rules of aerial warfare and buried the Luftwaffe under an avalanche of lead. German pilots had laughed at the ungainly American fighter in April 1943. By May 1945, there were no German pilots left to laugh. The thunder had spoken, and the sky belonged to America.